Did you know that in some jurisdictions you can get divorced by newspaper? Welcome back to the Divorce Broadcast channel. My name is Manny Segarra, coming to you from Miami, Florida. What do you do when you want to get a divorce and you don't know where your spouse is or where they live? Check to see if in your jurisdiction you can use a method called divorce by publication. So, when do you try to use a divorce by publication? Well, there's a couple examples. For instance, what I like to call the walkers. They were tired of being tired one day and walked out of their marriage and never turned around to look back. Another example may be for those in abusive relationships. Maybe they are fearful of their spouse. Maybe they had to escape a dangerous situation in which they were subject to abuse. And maybe they kind of are laying low and don't want their spouses to know where they are. Or for some of our friends who are immigrants into this country. Maybe they got married in the old country, they immigrated to the United States, their marriage overseas fell apart, and now they got to get divorced. These are just some examples of when you would use a divorce by publication. So, before I go into the nuts and bolts as to how to get divorced by publication, I want to give you a couple pro tips. Number one, don't be slick. Don't fake that you don't know where your spouse is living. I have seen a lot of people show up to court, say they don't know where their spouse is, and then the judge starts asking questions. If you have their phone number or a last known address or their email address, or if you have them on social media, the easiest route is to just tell your attorney about it. Your attorney will reach out. They'll try to engage and see if they can reach an amicable resolution to your divorce. Especially if you don't have any property together, any bank statements, any kids together. If you don't have anything together, they probably don't even want to be married with you anyways. Again, each jurisdiction is different, but I'm going to walk you through the process, at least in Florida, of divorce by publication. The first step is that you actually have to open and file the divorce case. Then you must actually attempt to serve the petition paperwork at the last known address of your spouse. Don't give a fake address. Don't give a vacant parking lot, or don't give like a movie theater. Give an actual address, because the process server is going to go out. They're going to attempt service, and they will file what's called a return of service, indicating that your spouse no longer lives at that last address. Once that initial service comes back as unable to be served, then your attorney has to start making or taking steps to try to show that they have looked and tried to locate where your spouse is. This entails several steps. It entails sending letters to the branches of the military looking for your spouse to make sure that they're not there. You also would contact the Department of Motor Vehicles, the DMV, to see if they have any indication of where that person or where that spouse may live. You will also send a letter out to the Department of Corrections, because who knows, maybe your spouse is in jail or in prison. You will also contact different governmental agencies, the U.S. Postal Service. You will contact perhaps a tax collector, local police departments. Your attorney will send out letters requesting any information about where this missing spouse is. It's also a good idea to try to do other searches, like a Google search or internet searches for where this spouse may be living. You may want to check on social media, contact extended family. I know the white pages probably aren't as big a thing as they used to be, but it never hurts to look. And in extreme cases, you may consider hiring a PI. But those steps are just kind of extra. It is really important, though, to make sure to send out the correspondence to the 4 branches of the military, the DMV, the Department of Corrections, and the local governmental agencies. As those letters go out and they come back indicating that your spouse cannot be found or located, or that they don't have records regarding this person, then in Florida they file what's called a notice of action in court. You will receive a default date from the judge that is usually from the clerk of court. You'll receive a default date, which is usually 6 to 8 weeks out, and they will give you permission to publish the case in a newspaper. Once you get permission to publish case in the newspaper, you will send out the information to a particular newspaper agency. Now, you're not going to publish it in the New York Times or the Washington Post or any of those big time national newspapers. You're also not going to post it in the National Enquirer or something like that. It doesn't work that way. Each jurisdiction has local newspapers that accept publication. In Miami-Dade County, it's usually going to be the Daily Business Review, the Miami Community Newspaper, or other papers that are similar. What happens is that you pay a fee, you send a check with the publication information, the documentation, the petition paperwork, you send it off to the newspaper agency, and they will run it in the paper for 6 to 8 weeks, which corresponds with the default date. After you wait the 6 to 8 weeks, you will notify the clerk that there has been no response to your divorce, and the clerk will enter a default, at which point you can schedule your case for final hearing. At the final hearing, the divorce will look to make sure that all the documentation is in order. If all of that is in order, then the court will grant a final judgment of dissolution or divorce. However, there's always a catch. Remember that if you get divorced by publication, there are a couple things that will not be ultimately resolved by the court. Number one, the court will reserve jurisdiction on all of the issues relating to children. Number two, equitable distribution of assets and liabilities. Since the spouse did not respond, since there was a default, the court will reserve on equitable distribution of assets and liabilities. And finally, the court will also reserve ruling on alimony. What does it mean that the court will reserve ruling on these three issues? That means that if your spouse magically appears again, then he or she may be able to file a motion in court to address these issues at a later date. They also will have the opportunity to verify whether or not you knew where they were. So remember that tip that I gave you at the beginning of this video? Never fake it, because you're going to get caught if you do and your spouse comes back out of the woods. So just to kind of sum everything up, you can get divorced by publication in Florida. You have to take a couple steps, which include filing the case, attempting service of process, sending out correspondence and letters to different governmental agencies, doing Google internet searches to see if you can find your spouse, getting a default date, publishing it in the newspaper, getting a default entered after no response, and then going to court knowing that the court will reserve ruling on some very important issues if your spouse creeps back from the darkness. So if you know anyone who has a spouse that is address or whereabouts unknown and they feel like they want to get divorced, we can help them with that. Please schedule a consultation with us and we'd be happy to discuss divorce by publication with them. You can reach us at www.segarralawfirm.com. We have offices in Miami and Orlando. Se habla español? We ask that you please like this video, think about subscribing to our channel, and forward this video to any of your friends whose spouses have drifted away into the night and now they need to get divorced. Thank you and best of luck to you all.